All right, so these right-wing stories about people crying, they've become so ridiculous that they're essentially parodies of themselves. I'm not really going to show you one of those here from Republican Senator Ted Cruz, although it certainly reminded me of it. But this actually is one of these stories about people coming up to me. The prototypical one that Trump tells is, oh, you know, with the people that arrested last week, he said the people that arrested me were crying when they arrested me. Okay. The the sort of subtext of this particular story from Ted Cruz is that whenever he lands at different airports, police just flock to him. Police flock to him and they just all support him so much. And this is, again, it's dubious. It's always dubious. When Ted Cruz in this clip, he's going to say it's like a dozen police officers or whatever. It's probably happened at some point that a police officer came up to Ted Cruz and gave him a patch or whatever Cruz says here. But there's a very significant political utility to these particular types of stories. So listen to this one, and then we're going to talk about it.
The most striking place to fly into is Chicago. I land at Chicago O'Hare Airport. I am with some regularity met by 10, 12, 15 uniformed police officers who come. They shake my hand. They give me patches. I've got in my office patches of the Chicago PD that are displayed in my office because those cops are so under assault.
Yeah. But were they crying when they met you, sir? Okay, so what is the point of these stories at this point in time? The point is that it would be extremely dangerous and damaging to Republicans for it to become known that there is plenty of military and law enforcement that supports Democrats. And in fact, when you look at the 2020 presidential election, one of the interesting things about it, yes, the military leans right. There's no question about that. But one of the interesting things about the military vote in 2020 is that it was one of the highest levels of support for the Democratic candidate that Joe Biden received from members of the military than had been seen by Democrats for a very long time. I don't remember the exact numbers. They don't really matter. But the point is, compared to past elections, it was a higher level of support. And this is all because Republicans want, and to some degree have obtained, a monopoly on certain elements of political discourse. Law and order, or as Trump once called it, law and auto. Auto insurance, very, very important issue, but something else altogether. Republicans use this law and order messaging. We are for law and order when it comes to immigration, when it comes to street crime, when it comes to demonstrations, when it comes to all of these different things. And they portray themselves as the arbiters of law and order. And so they do that to appeal to voters who prioritize safety and who prioritize security. Now, understand that it's total BS. It's complete and total utter BS. The reality is law and order means we want our political enemies targeted, but we don't want to be targeted when we do the same things. Law and order means we support the police, except when it's the DC Capitol Police trying to beat off rioters on January 6th of 2021. Or law and order, except when it's not. Law and order, no one is above the law except when it's Trump. And then why isn't he above the law? He should be above the law. That's the messaging. And if it became known that they aren't actually the party of law and order, it would be very damaging. Nationalism and patriotism, another element of this supposedly, so remember, it's supposedly pro-police narrative. The Republican Party often translates or utilizes stated support for police and the military as a point of national pride. They must love the country more because they support police and police support them. What? That doesn't really make any sense. Or the military. Again, and particularly when there's a crisis or a conflict or a war, as we saw during the Iraq War under George W. Bush's presidency, that can actually be pretty useful. It taps into feelings of loyalty and duty among many in the country. And then thirdly, this narrative about how much police love Ted Cruz, it's to draw a distinction with Democrats. You emphasize, we have the support of police and members of the military. And that's because Democrats are weak or they're unpatriotic or whatever. And if Democrats are seen as being critical of law enforcement, then that contrast is even more useful. So it's another one of these "they come up to me with tears in my eyes" stories from Cancun Ted Cruz, but it is part of a much larger political area of political strategy that if Republicans were to lose, and they should lose it because it's all completely fabricated, would be very damaging to them.